We've got a fairly good turnout here. So it's good to see that we have both the hybrid meeting. I don't have a whole lot to offer tonight other than get your reservations in for the holiday party on December 14th. And it's going to be up at the old spaghetti factory. And you probably say, well, I'm the broken record because I keep repeating that on the Sunday night net. So with that, we hope to see everybody there. Some good time, some good food. Make a lot of face-to-face QSOs, you know, and meet some people that you only hear their call signs on the radio. So I think it'll be a good time, you know, and it's a new and a different venue. As the president, we also have board meetings. I just wanted to bring up the fact that normally on the fourth Wednesday of the month, we have a board meeting, but due to the holidays, we've postponed the one this month and the one in December because of Christmas Eve, and we're going to be holding it, you know, on the 10th of December. So we're supposed to publicly put that out there when we move the board meetings. So just to let everybody know that we do hold them, and we are obviously trying to make good use of the club and all of our assets, including our repeaters and stuff along those lines. I always like to want to open it up. Are there any questions for me as the president that you want to bring forth? If so, open it up, or anybody in the room. Hearing none, I guess we can go on with the presentation. I want to recognize Bob, NB0BN.
That's right.
Or did I say that backwards?
Yeah, I think you had it backwards, but that still works.
I believe he's got an anagram for a call sign. So with that, I'll let you introduce yourself and let you talk about the topic tonight.
All right.
So here you are, Bob.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Bob Mesenbrink. I've been a ham since 2018 is all. I had been licensed back in 78 or so. I got my novice license, but never got on the air, never got active because I graduated from college, moved to Colorado, got a job, had a family, and never got active. Let my license expire. And after I retired, I was restoring old household AA5 radios. And that was all right for a while. That's kind of fun, but that got kind of old. And I saw on Craigslist, someone was advertising a Swan 270. And I didn't know anything about Swan. But I got to thinking about it. I thought, well, that'd be kind of nice to look at something like that and get my ham license again. And so I did. I got my ham license. I got passed all the tests. And on the way home, I bought that 270 from the guy up in near Brighton and brought it home and I got on the air with that. And since then, I found there's some good resources on Swans. There's a couple nets. There's a Sunday net at 2 p.m. our time, and Wednesday 2300. There's a Swan Tech net that I'm always on, talking to Jack down in Mississippi, getting all the help I need for restoring these things. And so there's lots of good resources. The Groups.io has a Swan Network group that's really helpful, and I get a lot of information out of that. There are so many people know so much about these radios, and it's just, I just really love them. But I will say, my interest in ham radio is very narrow. This is all I know. Swan radios, HF, voice is all I do. I don't do CW, so my interests are very narrow. But I'm glad to see so many people come out for this, because I wasn't sure when I offered this how well attended it would be. And I'm just really happy, because I think there's a lot of members in the club that probably have a lot to offer. They just don't know if it'd be of interest to everyone. And I think there's a room for a lot of different topics here. And I know the club's had a lot of troubles getting presentations, so you know, I think just keep that in mind. So this radio here is the 500C. I picked this up at the Hamfest back in August. There's a table with 4 of these, 4 different Swan radios and some power supplies and stuff on the table. And gosh, I have probably 20, 25 of these radios at home that I've worked on. I'm not looking for any new radios, but I asked him what he wanted for those 4 radios, and he said $200. I can't let those radios go for that, so they followed me home. But this one, I wasn't really, I didn't really know how good a shape these were, because when you pick them up at a Hamfest, a lot of times they're covered with dust and they're hidden behind stuff on top. So you're kind of taking a little bit of a chance. You don't know what's inside. You don't know if they have all the tubes or any tubes, or maybe the crystals are gone. Who knows? They might be a parts radio when you're done. But anyway, I picked this one up and I was very pleasantly surprised. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So this is, I took these pictures as I restored it. It took me a couple days to do is all. This one was actually in excellent shape. It didn't take much work at all. It didn't have any problems with it. It just needed to be aligned and cleaned. But when I looked at the front, this is a key for me, is how good is the front panel? Because I'm not capable of putting those labels back on that get worn off. And I can't match the paint. So I want a perfect front panel, if I can possibly get it. The outer case, the sides and the top, I can repaint that. That's just kind of a wrinkle paint. You can buy that at the auto parts store. This one didn't need it. Next one. Yeah, you can see the outside. It's just a little scuffed up. It's okay. I wouldn't bother repainting this one, but it's not perfect. Next. The back, the key here is what changes have they made to this radio, because a lot of times hams would make modifications. They would add extra jacks for different things. This one didn't have anything done to it, so this was a special find, I thought. The Johnson connector is all clean. The coax connector was clean. The screws, no corrosion that I could tell on any of the screws. The S-meter adjustment and the bias adjustment all turned properly. The only problem was it had an etching for the ID, a couple different ID etchings on there, which I don't think is a big problem. So just a matter of opening up the top. It's just 3 screws on each side. And you can pop the top off next. And look inside. I was pretty happy. It's pretty clean. You can see the shiny finish on most of the chassis. There's a little bit of corrosion spots on there in a few places, but nothing unusual for a radio like this. And I call this a 60-year-old radio. This was actually built in 1968, so it's not quite 60. But for something that age, depending on where it was stored, they can be a mess inside. They can be totally corroded on the inside. The screws, I've had some where all the screws in the back were just rusted and everything. I think they probably came from the Midwest or somewhere like that. But this one wasn't too bad. The PA cage houses, well, for this type of Swan, there's 2 sweep tubes in there. And normally, the 500C, it was the first one of Swan to come out and use the 6LQ6 tubes. But when I opened it up, and next slide, I was pleasantly surprised because it had 8950s in it. This had a professional upgrade to the 8950s. And they're just a more powerful sweep tube. They're used in the 700 CXs and I think maybe the 300B Swans. They're not used very often, but they're very expensive. They're hard to find now. They're almost impossible to find. If you need to replace that, it's almost a matter of finding another tube that'll work, like a 6LF6 or a 6LB6 or something like that. But you might have to change the socket or rewire it a little bit to make that work. But sometimes that's the only option. So anyway, I was pleasantly surprised that they had 8950s, but still it's a little bit of a risk because I don't know how good these are. A lot of times when you find these old radios, one of the reasons they've been retired is because the PA tubes went weak on them and they just said, well, I'll just buy a new radio and put this in the closet for 30 years or whatever. But this one, it turned out the 8950s were all right. This is a look at the coarse loads rotary switch, and you can see that inner ring around the shaft there, how corroded, how dirty that is. And I like to get that cleaned off. I think one of the biggest problems in restoring an old radio is these rotary switches being so dirty. And everything else in there is dirty. They just need to be cleaned really good. But this rotary switches, especially band switches, in Swan, some of them are like 5 different wafers, and it's just so many problems are because there's a bad connection on one of those switches, and some of them are really hard to clean. Well, we'll cover that later, but I use, I found a product called Super Clean at the auto parts store. It's just a liquid, you use it to spray some really dirty parts on the car. And I use that in a Q-tip, and it just melts that stuff right off for the most part. A lot of times it does anyway. Sometimes a little more than that, but I use a Q-tip, and then I'll put some deoxit on after that. And that seems to be a good solution for me. And then the bottom. 9 screws hold the bottom on. And here again, you got to wonder what you're going to find under there. But I was really happy here again too. You can see in the upper left, you see those two, where the bottom of those 2 sockets, those are the 8950 sockets. That's all modified. There's actually a sticker on the bottom of this for some company in California that must have done that modification, because it's a very professional looking modification. I guess you could turn these back into the factory and they would do it for you too, at a cost. So after getting done with the inspection there, it's time to start cleaning. So I start by pulling out all the tubes. Sometimes I'll just do 1 tube at a time, but this time I thought I'm just going to pull them all out. That way I can get a good clean on the chassis and get all the pins on the sockets cleaned and make it all look really nice. Yeah, I forget. This is a GC tool. I saw something on the internet that someone had one of these and they swore by it. And they said, if you ever find one, get one of these. It's basically like a salad fork tong with only two ends to it, and it's coated with like a plastic material. And it works really well. I found this on eBay probably 2 years after I was looking for it, so it took a while to find, and I've never seen one again. But it works really nice for some of the tight places. I use it to pull crystals out too sometimes. So, but if you pull all the tubes out, you got to be careful. You got to get them back in the right place. So I'm careful to get be very methodical about it, and you know, keep good track of where they all go and keep them in order. And also, I've found sometimes that an old radio like this, they'll have a couple tubes swapped by mistake. So it's a good time to make sure that they're all in the right place and the right tube. So, I mean, I found 5-volt tubes, which I think might be okay, but, you know, they're supposed to be 6-volt and 12-volt tubes. But, yeah. So, yeah, that's what it looks like without the tubes in it. We'll skip ahead there. Cleaning, I use isopropyl alcohol, paper towel, toothbrush for some of the hard to get places. I use toothpicks to get into each socket pinhole. This radio, it wasn't too bad. It didn't really need too much cleaning in the sockets, but I think it's all right to do anyway. But I use the alcohol a lot. I think it takes out a lot of the grease and stuff that's built up over time. But I think it's important to test that on your surfaces, because on the early Swans, I was restoring one of those, and some of the alcohol got onto the dial, the tuning dial print, and it actually dissolved that print. So that gave me a whole new problem, but that was unexpected, and that took a little bit of creativity to fix that.
Cleaning, clip-tip cleaning tools. They're super small. They'll clean those. They make them in brass, and they'll polish that out and clean them for really cool.
Oh, okay. So I'm hearing that you go on. You say Amazon to get, and these are gas welding cleaning kit? Okay, small gas welding kit for cleaning is supposed to be helpful for some of that small stuff. So I'm going to look into that. That's a good tip. Appreciate that. Okay, so not a whole lot of difference that you can tell on this picture, but we got the tubes out. We got it all cleaned. Didn't notice any damage. It all looked pretty good. Yeah, go ahead. With the tubes out, now is the time to test those tubes. I use a cardmatic tester that I found on Craigslist several years back. It's kind of a fun little tester to use. You use cards. You don't have any settings to make on your tube tester. You just put these cards in for each tube, and for each test you're going to run on that tube, and it 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons, and you're done. So, but anyway, the 8950s tested like new, so I was just thrilled to death. That was a huge find. Those are probably worth more than I paid for the 4 radios altogether. So that was a good find. And about testing tubes, I don't throw out any tubes unless they're obviously bad. Like if they have a short or something like that, I just note their strength. If they're weak, I'll keep them in there because they might be okay for the radio, but I'll make a note. So if I have a problem in a particular stage, I'll say, oh, that tube was weak. Let me trade that out with something better. But I don't like to throw away tubes if they're going to possibly work at all. Most of the tubes in the Swan are really pretty easy to get, so it's really not too much of a problem. Some of them use the 7360 balanced modulator tubes, and those are kind of hard to get. But a lot of people are substituting the 6JH8, I forget now. And you have to rewire your socket, but it's a very similar circuit. Next. Get the tubes back in. And then it's on to cleaning the front panel. Easiest way I found to do that is just to take all the knobs off. The knobs need to be cleaned. The panel needs to be cleaned under the knobs. So it's just a matter of taking the knobs off. Nothing too complicated. The Swans use this Jackson drive for tuning. So it's kind of a 2-speed dial. This is kind of the outer metal aluminum ring. It spins. You can go 100 kilohertz really fast with that. The inner drive is good for like 10 kilohertz, hit a turn, something like that. So it's a really nice feature, but it is a little bit more complicated of a device to deal with. The biggest problem with them is over 50 years or 60 years, the grease in there that lubricates the bearings that create that gearing, that grease gets hard and stiff and you can't turn it very well, if at all. So have to take this all apart. You take the black knob off, and then next. And then you take that metal knob off. And then you finally get to the actual Jackson drive mechanism. And that's next. Couple screws on the side, and then there's a set screw in the shaft, and then that all pops out. You can see what it looks like there. That's looking at the inside, the back of the Jackson drive, and that supporting ring around there. And then on the right, you can see what you're looking at there. It's kind of hard to figure out. It's kind of a clear bowl, and it's got mineral spirits in there. And I dropped that Jackson drive unit right in that mineral spirits. It only takes about 10 minutes. I'll let it soak in the mineral spirits. I'll take it out, spin the knob around, soak it some more, spin it around some more, soak it, and I'll finally take it to the air compressor and blow all that mineral spirits out of there. And then I'll put some grease, kind of push some grease in there so that it turns again really well, and it's nice and smooth. And afterwards you can come up and you can see how smooth these things turn. But that's one of the things that goes bad. Yeah, there you go. Then the knobs, I put them in soapy water. Sometimes that little aluminum inset on the knob, sometimes the glue comes loose on there, but that's just a matter of gluing it back on. But soak it in there, use a toothbrush, get them clean, real nice and clean. Get that metal ring, get those grooves on there cleaned really good with a brush, and it comes out pretty good. Next. And then again, alcohol with a soft cloth. I clean the panel since the knobs are all off. It's a good solvent, I think. But like I say, make sure if you're doing some other radio that the alcohol is a good solution for it. It works good for the older Swans, and it gets everything nice and clean, gets all the gunk off. So there's what it looks like with the knobs back on and all cleaned up and ready to go. Here's, you were asking about how to clean those rotary switches. And like I say, it's a product called Super Clean. It's from the auto parts store. It's, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it works really well. And I haven't found any drawbacks to it. I use a Q-tip. I rub it on there. Have to be careful not to hook those contacts, but it works pretty fast. And it's like the most effective thing I've found. I'll clean it off with the Super Clean, and I'll rinse it off with a little clear water on the Q-tip, and then dry it up, and then put the deoxit on. You see on the right side there. Probably one thing I could have done, but I didn't, was the coax connector. Some of the insulating phenolic there is broken off there, but I didn't think it was deep enough to be a problem. It doesn't seem to hurt it, so I figured I'd just leave that for now. But someday, when I don't have one of those to replace yet, so at some point I'll do that. Like I say, the band switch, there's, I think, 5 sections to some of these Swans. It's 5 different wafers, and one of them is inside the VFO compartment. The VFO is well secured in this metal brass-looking box you see there. So I have to open that up and get to that and make sure that's okay. This is a look inside. You can see the switch on the right of that box there. It's actually pretty clean, but a little deoxit on there is all I did. Otherwise, it was in pretty good shape. It's it's sealed all the time, so there's nothing that's going to get in there too bad. These relay contacts are a problem sometimes. You can see how these are kind of corroded a little bit. So this is this is an open relay. There's 2 relays in most Swans. One's enclosed. It's encapsulated. It's enclosed. You can open it up and clean it, but typically it's not necessary. But this one's out in the open, and it handles some pretty good size voltages, I think. So sometimes you even have to get a little sandpaper to kind of smooth off some of the pitting on there. But this one didn't have any of that. But I did use the Super Clean and give them a good polishing, both the movable contact that's in the upper right and the fixed contacts in the lower left there. Yeah, they took a little bit of work. Johnson plug, like to see them shine. All the voltages from the power supply, which it's a separate power supply unit, so I don't have that here, but it's a separate power supply unit, and all those voltages from 800 volts, closer to 900 these days, on down to minus 110 come through there. So that has to be nice and clean to have good contact. Speaker connections go through there too. And then there's a handful of parts I generally replace automatically, and that's all the electrolytic capacitors and all the tubular capacitors. I don't know. I'd like to replace the electrolytics just automatic. Some people would try to reform them, but I'm doing this now. I really don't want to be troubleshooting this radio any more than I have to in the future. So I'd replace all the electrolytics. And those tubular capacitors, I've heard bad stories about them. I don't think I've ever had one test bad or anything, but there's only a handful of capacitors of that nature in these things. So I just replace them all. And I try to be careful and do them 1 lead at a time because, I mean, it's easy to get them in the wrong place if you pull them out or forget where they go or get distracted or something. So I do them 1 lead at a time. I pop it off, put the new one on, repeat for the other side. And here again, it just pays to be methodical about everything you do when you're restoring these. There's a CAN capacitor in here. It filters the power, the high voltage, the 800, 900 volt power from the power supply, and the medium voltage, which is more like 300 volts. But I've done this a couple different ways. You can replace the capacitor with a company in Iowa called Hayseed Hamfest. They make replacement CAN capacitors that have the right combination of values and voltages, capacitors built into their CAN. But I don't think it looks quite original. I think they look nice, but they're a little bit bigger, and I don't think it's quite original. I try to keep it original to some extent, as much as I can. But the key here is you got to mark everything on the bottom, make sure you get the leads back in the right one, make sure you know which voltage and capacitance you're dealing with for each lug. Unsolder those and pull it out. But I repack them. I've got a 32 GPI hacksaw blade, which is about as fine as I could find at Home Depot anyway. And I just cut that off at the bottom and try to do it as smooth, as straight as I can possibly can, but I'll also mark it so I can get it back together in the same spot. I want to make sure it lines up really well. That's what I need. A jeweler's hacksaw would be great. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Well, this doesn't work too well, but I'll keep in mind the jeweler's hacksaw because that's probably. I knew there was a better way to do it, but I'll open this up and you can see what it looks like, and you'll see it's not bad really. Anyway, you cut that off and you pull out the innards. This one came out pretty easy. Sometimes it's a chore. Sometimes they're stuck in there like they were never meant to come out, and they weren't ever supposed to come out. But they're stuck in there really well sometimes. This one popped right out all in one piece. So this capacitor, this CAN needed 3 capacitors in it. It had three lugs connected plus the ground lug. So I needed to drill the bottom for each of those 3 lugs and by the ground, a ground, so I could run the capacitor wires through there and connect them up to the lug, or solder them to the lugs. So it took me a while to find the right capacitors to use because this CAN capacitor is not very big. It's only a little over 1 inch in diameter, and some of these capacitors are, they get to be, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch round, and you can't get 2 in the CAN side by side, and they're too long to fit on top of each other. So I had to do a lot of research to find the right ones. These are Nichicons, and there's a certain series, I don't know it offhand, but there's a certain series of their capacitors you can buy from Mouser or DigiKey or something that fit the bill really nicely. So there you can see I've run the leads through those drilled holes and soldered them to the lugs. And sometimes I'll wrap tape around them, secure them together. get it all wired up, and then I check it, make sure before I seal it up, I want to make sure that it's giving me the right capacitance. So here you can see the 10 picofarad one is, or microfarad one is showing up here in a good condition. And this is what I do. To put it back together, I'd line up the top and the bottom, and I use super glue. Now super glue, you know, is pretty runny, but if you lay it down, put a drop of super glue on there, and then get this stuff called zip kicker. Spray that on that glue, and it's hard instantly. And you can turn it over, do the same thing, and then you can run a bead around the whole thing, and it just makes it really, really quick to do. And it's not permanent either. They do break open. You're pretty easy, really, but it'll be fine for most use. But there you see, it's all back together. And I can put it back in the socket there and flip it over, and we can solder it all back together. So these are, aside from the can capacitor, these are the ones I replaced. I think that big electrolytic on the bottom was on the top, on the back. The rest were on inside on the bottom. But it's not a lot of work. I use a digital readout. You can see that digital readout in the upper right corner. These are just those cheap Chinese things you can get on eBay or Amazon even, or AliExpress. You used to be able to get them for like $7, $8. I think now they're like 15 or something like that, but they work really well for a digital readout. And I highly recommend a digital readout for a boat anchor because, as we all know, they drift a little bit until you get them warmed up. And it's easy to not know if you're drifting or not unless you have a digital readout. So I think those are important. Plus, it's just nice to have for tuning and stuff. But I do like to get the dial aligned as close as possible. So using that digital readout and adjusting the VFO, I can get the alignment, you know, pretty close. Then the alignment involves peaking the VFO for each band, and that's what I'm doing here. I use an oscilloscope. I don't go by the manual. I have an oscilloscope. I like using the oscilloscope. You don't need to. There's other ways to do it. The manual would give you some ideas on what to do. He would tell you how to do it, but I like seeing the signal. I like seeing that it's clean. I got a nice clean sine wave for each frequency, and I can peak it, and I can see it grow or shrink depending on how I adjust it. So it works really well for peaking. Then the other part of alignment on the next page is the mixer and the driver stages. Now, in order to really test these, you need to hit transmit or tune typically in this case, but there's no need to have the PA tubes putting out any power. No use stressing them, no use wearing out your sweep tubes just for an alignment. Plus, you're running quite a bit of power through there, and it wouldn't take long to burn them out. So pull off the screen voltage to those PA tubes, and then you can run tune and not put out any power, but you can monitor the power going to the PA tubes to make sure the driver and the mixer are peaked properly. 300 volts, that screen voltage is about 300 volts, so I'd like to cover that up. Anyway, you can see I got the scope probe. The very clip is right on the top of that little disc capacitor. That disc capacitor is running from the, oh, you see that big silver wire on the kind of third of the way up from the bottom. That's coming from the driver. That capacitor feeds the grid of the power amplifier tubes. But I just clip that right on the body of the capacitor and measure the signal that way. That way I'm minimizing how much effect I'm having on the tuning. So Swans typically had 5 bands, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. Each manual for each radio tells you what frequency to use, where to set the grid control, and then what coils to adjust to peak it. But that's all you're doing. You're hitting it, putting it in tune, and then you're peaking those. Once you got the frequency set and the grid control set, you can peak it each coil one at a time. Got to monitor, make sure that the sine wave across the driver, output of the driver is a good sine wave. It looks good, it's clean, because it's easy enough, especially on the higher bands, to get the wrong frequency. You can get 28 megahertz coming out 21 meter band kind of thing. And I don't think that's a good thing. So, but anyway, peak those signals with the scope. You can see in the bottom left there, I got the black tool and the driver coil, and the red tool and the mixer coil. Easy enough to find those tools on eBay. Anyway, yeah, I put some little dry lube on all the controls that turn, and a little contact spray in the pots and the little slide switches. Few minor adjustments, and this radio was done. It's not always that easy. Sometimes there's problems. This one didn't have any problems. But if there's problems, then that's another thing. Then that's a matter of going through each stage and trying to figure out what's going on. The Swan manuals, I'd say if you ever find a Swan, you'll probably won't find the manual, but you can download most of them off of, Groups.io or other places on the internet, and you get the manual, and it'll give you a schematic. Here's one that I like this one because the guy went to a lot of trouble to kind of fix this one up, and it has a lot of the voltages marked and the tubes marked well, and nice one. But this one is only for this radio, so I have about 20 some other radios that have their own schematics. The 500C is interesting because it was kind of a transitional radio. It went between the 500 and the 500CX, and there were 7 different versions of this radio in a span of about 2 years. All a little bit different. They went from like this one has uses a vacuum tube for the carrier oscillator, but the later versions of the 500C used transistors for the carrier oscillator. So they were making changes all the time, and I think some people have troubles with that because they can't find the right schematic for the radio they have. But really, I don't think it's a big deal, because if you have a 500 schematic and a 500CS schematic, you'll have everything you need, just maybe not be in the same place. But that can be a challenge sometimes. The other thing, sure. Bama, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I make use of Bama a lot. It's like you say, it's got schematics for every brand going way back, and test tools and everything. It's got a lot of stuff. I would recommend anyone who got interested in Swan. There's a document called the Swan Compendium. It's also available on Groups.io, and it's really good. It's 300 and some pages. It's got all the details, kind of the history of Swan, all the different models, what the differences were, what tubes they use, what the problems are, what kind of fixes you have. It's just the place to start. Anytime you have a problem with a Swan, it's the first place to start. And then posting to Groups.io is always, you always get a good response from those guys, because there's a lot of people there that know a lot more about it than I do. So it's a very valuable resource. But otherwise, I think that's about all I have. I'm glad to answer any other questions you have, or This radio puts out about 400 watts. Now this is unusual because it's got those 8950s in it, and they're good ones, so it's a good find. But you know, basically it's a $50 radio with a couple days work part time. So I'm really pleased with it, and I think a lot of people could get interested in these things if they wanted something different to do. Besides, I see these things at Hamfest and I feel like, oh, I can't let that go. It's not that I need the radio. I just I want to save it. And I don't think that's a good thing. So I think there's room for some more buyers out there in the Swan area. Yeah, on the back there's a couple extra sockets. They look like tube sockets, but this one is actually a VFO connector. Normally you would have a special plug on there that shorts it out so that it uses the VFO that's inside. I left that home because it was attached to my frequency counter, but you either have that plug in there or you would have a VFO outside unit plugged in there as well. Yeah, in fact, with the Swan, you'd have to have a special device. I forget what it's called, but to do the split, you have to have a special, another switching device to deal with that. But yeah, you need the two VFOs for starters. And the second socket is for a Vox or a CW break-in capability.
And what do they want? When you switch sidebands on this thing, it changes the frequency. So you've got it might be 14,300 upper sideband. When you go to switch it over to the lower sideband, you actually have to move the dial so that I had a 270 Signet, a couple of them.
Yeah.
And everybody that went to use it, what the hell is he doing here?
Yeah, so what Orland's talking about is there's the tuning dial. There's two lines on there. One's for upper sideband and one's for lower sideband. So the later Swans did away with that. I'm not sure. They must have compensated that with the tuning inside somehow. But yeah, this one still had the two lines. So you got to pay attention to upper sideband, lower sideband, which line to look at. They're only 3 kilohertz apart. So, but you're at the wrong place, yeah. And I'll say I don't look at that dial as much as my frequency counter, so I'm not a true old-time user, I guess, because I like my frequency counter. I like my frequency display to tell me where I'm at. Yeah. Yeah, I'm nothing spectacular. I just get on. Usually, I'm just on with the guy in Mississippi or the Swan Nets on Sunday afternoon. I'll get on with them, guys in California. So yeah, it works really good. Get lots of good comments on it. Not always the case when you do a new one. It's like I'm always a little bit worried when I get on the air with the radio for the first time because I'm not real confident. But this one was no problem. A lot of good reports.
Oh, I've got Drake, I've got Peakhead, I've got Swan, and if you pick one brand and work with the same brand for a while, start learning a whole lot more about that. The idiosyncrasies of each brand.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it is important, I think, to stick with a brand, I think, and if you're restoring radios, it's really good because I can go back all the way to the 100 series radios that came out in '61, the very first ones that Herb Johnson made, and then follow that to the 240, the 350, the 400s, the 500 series, the 700 series, and you can just see the evolution and how they changed things and how they solved problems that they were getting because of the different changes they made, and how they went from like the 100 series radios. They didn't have any there were no solid state diodes or anything in there, no transistors, and this radio has several diodes in it, silicon diodes, and I think there's four. I think, well, no, probably just two, probably two transistors in there. And ultimately, they would have a lot. Along with this, at that same Hamfest, same four, one of them was an HF700S, which is the last tube radio Swan made. And it has, I think there's four different little circuit boards, little electronic circuit boards in there, where this one has one for one of the carrier, or the VFO, I think, or the I don't know, one of the oscillators is transistor, and it's on a little circuit board. Where you get into the later ones, they had more and more and more. Yeah, so Swan made they were one of the first ones to come out with a 100-watt solid state rig, I believe. I think they came out with that in I'm not sure now. I think around 1970, but they were one of the first ones to come out with one with that much power. And I have one of those in SS200. But they were still doing the tube radios. I think that solid state rig was pretty expensive for that day. And they made the tube radios up until the mid to late 70s. And then they finally, when they got merged in with cubic radio, they went all solid state. So those last ones in 79 and 80, those are all solid state radios. I have a Astro 150, and it's a nice little radio. It's a lot smaller, but size factor, almost all the Swans are this size and shape. So from going back to the Series 100s in the 1961, all the way up to the late 70s, are all this size and shape of a cabinet, except for the Swan twins, the 600R and 600T. They're a lot bigger. Surprisingly, you have a separate transmitter and a separate receiver, and they're a lot bigger. So, but they had their own power supplies built in, where these have an exterior power supply, external. But anyway, that's that's about all I got. It's about $50 to ship. I think they're about 20 pounds. Not too bad. The radios weigh about 20 pounds. Yeah, that's one of the downsides of buying and selling these. I like to find them at Hamfest because I don't like paying that shipping. If you buy one of these in a power supply, you're looking at $100 in shipping sometimes. So it's just a little ridiculous. But sometimes that's the only way you can find the one you're looking for. No, gosh, I thank you guys for letting me do this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate it. That was awesome. And thank you for answering all the questions as well. That was loud. I'll leave it over to you at this point, Jerome. Anything on your side?
No, if anybody has any questions here in the chat, we have 13 or so people. If anybody has any questions, let us know, but probably wrap things up.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. And we'll leave the call now. Thank you much.
Thank you all. Take care. Thanks everyone for attending. If you would like to see a recording of this, it's available on youtube.com/Denver Radio Club. Everyone, have a good evening.